So thank you for the introduction. I'm going to talk to you today about some of my research on securing smartphones by mining their situation spaces. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So as we know, smartphones are ubiquitous, serving as a mobile mechanism for storing all our personal data, whether it be private information, accounts, contacts, anything you can think of. And that's really, as a result, attracted many malware authors for writing all sorts of different ways of getting into your phone and stealing up private information, also, or even just turning your phone into a bot. And not only that, but we also seen many smartphones being stolen in the past due to device theft, maybe just for the device itself, but also possibly to get access to the content. And these are two motivating examples that we're going to take a look at and trying to solve and trying to detect automatically. So we all know we can use machine learning to try and detect when an anomaly occurs. And we know that contextual information improves machine learning performance. So by considering the situation of a particular actor, we can actually improve anomaly detection. So I'll just give you a few motivating examples. So let's say the actor is some application, let's say a game, and is transmitting data. Perhaps it's a game that's been infected with malware or has some sort of malicious adware inside. So if we take a look at the situation or the context of the screen being on or off, we can better understand whether the behavior is malicious or not. So another example is, let's say, the SMS messenger. So if an SMS is sent, if there's no screen, no keyboard on the screen, so obviously it seems very suspicious. And let's say even the human user, let's say the human user is the actor under context here. So if he opens up a banking application, we want to perhaps take a look at where the device is located presently. Maybe the device was stolen. Maybe this is somebody took the device and is trying to access the user's personal apps. So the challenge is that in many cases, at least for smartphones, explicit information is not available to the system. So you have to go to implicit contexts or latent contexts that are available from all sorts of different data streams that you can mine. So for example, you can mine the accelerometer to understand what the user is doing in general. And you can also mine the CPU usage of different applications to understand the general behavior. So our challenge is, how can we mine these situations in an unsupervised manner to better help us to detect these different cyber threats? So I'm going to talk to you now about PC Stream, an algorithm which we developed. And the PC Stream basically allows you to automatically mine these situation spaces in an online format. In other words, we assume there's an unbounded number of observations coming in. And we want to automatically model and also, of course, predict which observations belongs to which model. In other words, understand what is the situation of the stream right now. So a bit of background. So there are many different stream clustering algorithms out there, but the main issue with all these stream clustering algorithms is that they don't capture the ground truth. And in particular, what I mean is that many cases, clusters, if you will overlap in geometric space or in the feature space. So for example, if we take a look at the accelerometer of a smartphone, so when somebody's walking, it may look like the red pattern, if somebody's jumping, the blue pattern, and if he's running, the green pattern. But if you run any one of these stream clustering algorithms, it will kind of find some sort of partitioning of the space, and that doesn't respect the ground truth because, as you can see, they're overlapping. So you won't quite get the right situations or concepts out of the clustering. So we take a look at two different properties of situation spaces. The first property is the distinctiveness, so how distinct a situation may be. So if you're talking about a high distinctiveness, so you might find smaller distributions, maybe composite distributions, and a low distinctiveness, you would have more general distributions that you'd obtain from the data stream. And the second property, which is very important, is the term length. How long, the fact that when a stream is in a situation, it's not just in a situation for one observation, it's going to be in that situation for some minimum term length. And by deciding what term length we want to, or minimum term length we want to mine from our data stream, that will basically help us extract a particular set of situations. But not only that, it'll also help us segregate these overlapping concepts, because when we put the data stream over a time plane, it helps us partition it appropriately. Okay, so PC Stream allows us, as I mentioned, to detect these situation spaces automatically and dynamically while accounting for unbounded data, concept drifts. In other words, so each of these different situation spaces or clusters, if you will drift over time, so it adapts to that as well. Variable number concepts, you don't have to select some sort of parameter to initially to say how many situations you want to mine. And of course, most importantly, the overlapping situations. So let's dive a little bit deeper of how PC Stream works. So we model a situation as a Gaussian distribution where we perform principal component analysis on that distribution, and we have some buffer, a FIFO buffer, where older observations are forgotten over time. That helps us adapt for the concept drift. And whenever a new observation is added to the buffer, we recompute the PCA. Of course, PCA is a very complicated or complex algorithm to run, so we also have a version that uses incremental PCA. And we retain 98% of the variance. So that each situation space is its own principal component analysis. In other words, we have the coefficients of that principal component analysis, and that basically describes each situation. So as for the parameters, we have two parameters reflecting the two observations we had on situation spaces. So the first is how distinctive you want the situations that you're going to be mining to be, and what's the minimum term length. So I'll give you just another motivation weighing by term length. So let's say we're looking again at the accelerometer. So when somebody's walking to the bus, walking from his house to the bus, so a very long-term length would capture the entire journey. That happens every morning, and a shorter-term length would maybe capture the one when he steps down, goes down the steps, when he goes around the corner, and so on. And the final component of the algorithm is this buffer that captures the last or most recent t-min observations. And that's very important because that helps us understand when an observation belongs to a model, and thus we should update that model with that observation, or if it belongs to a new concept, and we should then put it into that, make a new concept with that observation. So let's just quickly go through how it kind of works. So an observation arrives, it goes into the buffer, and we measure how close that instance is to all the models in our collection. And we use, for our measurement, we use the Mahalanobis distance using the principal component coefficients. And once the observations fill up the entire buffer, only after observations start leaving the buffer, then we start updating our models. And again, that's because we want to make sure that we don't we actually detect overlapping or new overlapping concepts. So we update the assigned model, and then we take a look at the buffer and we say, is there a new situation in here? And if so, we'll make a new model. And the way we do that, there's many different strategies you can look at, but the way we do that in this case is we look at all the Mahalanobis distances that we measure for each of these observations. And we say if the majority of these observations go over the situation distinctiveness threshold, so kind of cutoff threshold, then we say then there's most likely a new situation here in this buffer, and we make a new model and add it to our collection. So we got very good results with using PC Stream with respect to other stream clustering algorithms. I'm not going to go too deep into the results. If you're interested, please take a look at our papers that we published in PAKDD and ACM SAC. But what I do want to go into a little bit more is, of course, the side of cyber, and that's anomaly detection. How we take this algorithm and perform anomaly detection. So there are three different kinds of anomalies. The first kind is point anomaly, where an observation stands out with respect to the general behavior. And the next kind is a contextual anomaly, where just looking at the behavioral feature itself is not enough to determine whether that's an anomaly, but with respect to another feature, which is a contextual feature, in this case, data transmission under the contextual feature of whether the screen is on or off, help us understand better if this is an anomaly. So that's a contextual anomaly. And finally, collective anomalies are where you can't look at one observation, you have to look at a collection of observations, and only this collection of observations represent an anomaly. So how do we do this with PC Stream? So for point anomaly detection, when a point arrives, we take a look at all the different models and measure the Mahalanobis distance. And if we see that this point exceeds the threshold that we decided for the algorithm, we say this is a point anomaly. Then for contextual anomalies, when a point arrives, we take a look at what's the closest model. And if that closest model is a rare model, then we say that this is a contextual anomaly because it belongs to a rare situation. And for collective anomalies, we just basically have a Markov chain. So we take a look at, we track the transitions between different situations, and we build a Markov chain. We could also do a hidden Markov model as well. So before I go over to the evaluations, I do want to spend some time talking about the data set that we collected for this project, because I think for most of the data scientists in this room, this is a very interesting data set, and it's freely available for you to download and use in your own research. So the experiment was called the Sherlock data collection experiment. And what we did is we gave out 50 smartphones, Galaxy S5 smartphones, to volunteers to use as a personal smartphone for 2 years. And on each of their smartphones, we had an application called Sherlock. And what Sherlock did is it went to every single possible virtual or physical sensor on the device, sampled all those sensors continuously at a very high temporal resolution, and transmitted all that information to our Hadoop cluster. And so now we have an understanding of what's happening on the device, but in order for us to have labels under the context of cyber attacks, we had to cause cyber attacks on the device and make a log of those different attacks and activities. So for that purpose, we had another application installed called Moriarty. And what Moriarty looked like was basically a benign application that the volunteer had to use. But really in the background, Moriarty was performing all sorts of different malicious behaviors, and it would, for example, would steal data or become adware, and it would change from time to time, and it would make clues or a record of what it's doing at any given time for Sherlock to collect and give us a labeled data set. So in order to make it easy to work with this immense amount of data, because we're talking about billions of data records, we collected as all the sensors at a very flattened, kind of flattened table, so you wouldn't have to do so many joins. So just quickly go over a quick review of the features that we have. So once every day, we collect general information of what telephone network he's connected to and hardware information. Once every minute, we take a look at what the user's location is in GPS, what cell tower information, device status, and we also perform a scan of every single access point, Wi-Fi access point, and Bluetooth device in the area to give you understanding where the user is and what his context is, along with the signal strength. Once every 15 seconds, we sample all the motion sensors for about 4 seconds at 200 hertz and extract all sorts of different statistical features. Every 10 seconds, we extract audio and light statistics, and every 5 seconds, this is the most intensive probe, we extract a large amount of information about what the operating system is doing and what the hardware is doing, and we go to every single application that's running on the device and extract as many features as possible. And this is just a view of all the different features that we're extracting from the device and from each and every application. In terms of event-based sensors, so we collect all the call logs, the SMS logs, the screen status when it turns on or off, or the user is present. And we, if anybody here knows Android, so we collect every single broadcast intent. And we also keep track of whenever an application is installed, updated, or removed. And we have the hashes of those applications, so you can cross-reference that with virustotal.com to see if there's a malware there, which actually, funny enough, we found that something like 3% of the applications on our volunteers' devices were malware, so go figure. And finally, we have Moriarty, which is, of course, our logs. So Moriarty, we have 12 different versions. Each one reflects a real-world malware. Sometimes it has to do with data leakage, sometimes it has to do with adware. We try to make sure that all the behaviors that we simulated there would be as diverse as possible so you can do your analysis accordingly. And just basic highlights before we move on. So again, 50 users. This is actually outdated. It's about over 2 years now. We sample all these different sensors at very high rates. We collect low-level Linux features, which you won't find in other data sets. And all the sensors that we collect do not require root privileges, which means that anybody who uses this data set to come up with some new model can be sure that they can deploy that application in the app market and not have any trouble. We have, of course, explicit labels for malicious activities, and of course, it's general purpose. It can be used for anything, not necessarily cyber. And presently, we have about 15 billion data records, and it's increasing every day. So anybody who wants access to this data set, please visit this link. You can find a sample data set on Kaggle with a link there to get the full data set as well. It'll be again at the end. Okay, so experimental results, going back to PC Stream. So for point anomaly detection, we want to detect data leakage. So compared to other string clustering algorithms which support point anomaly detection, we did quite well. Same with contextual anomaly detection. Here we're trying to look at general malicious behavior such as adwares and so on. And I'll go a little more in detail with the collective anomaly detection. What we want to do here is to detect device theft. And what we did was we took one user's accelerometer stream. And the moment we saw that the user put his device down and was about to pick it up again, we would then cut his stream and then attach another volunteer's stream the moment that volunteer was about to pick up his own phone. So basically simulated a case where somebody put down his phone on the table and somebody left it there and somebody came and picked it up and started using it. So using this approach, and here we see, for example, these are the Markov chains of all the different situations that we've detected. And we can see they're quite distinct, each user. And we found that we were just using a simple Markov chain, not even a hidden Markov model, we were able to get, we got a false positive rate of about once a week or so, and a detection delay of about 2-3 observations. And if anybody wants to look more into that, please take a look at our publication in Pervasive Mobile Computing. So to conclude, mining situation spaces is challenging because we need to detect overlapping clusters, and we also have the problem of unbounded amount of data. PC Stream can account for all these challenges by utilizing or taking to account the temporal aspect. And with using the Sherlock dataset, we're able to detect, use PC Stream to detect point, contextual, and collective anomalies. And again, here are the links if anybody wants. And if anybody would like access to the PC Stream algorithm, we have written in several different languages, as you can see, and feel free to visit GitHub and download those algorithms. The one that's most up to date is R and MATLAB. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? We have time maybe for one. Yes.
If you go to the statistical process control literature, you'll see that PCAs track Mahalanobis on the reduced space and also residuals, so that you can figure out if what you capture is an outlier without a change in structure, or it's a change in structure. So there's a whole literature on statistical process control. That remark also applies to the previous speaker. I mean, it seems like these are two different worlds, but they deal with the same problem.
Do they also account for online unbounded data sets?
Online, I understand. What do you mean by unbounded?
Unbounded meaning the data set is unlimited. It keeps on growing.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. You'll have an issue with Windows because eventually you probably enter some computational difficulties.
Right.
Yeah. There are sequential methods which are adaptive and don't have that problem, like Shiraev-Roberts, QSUMs, EWMA. There's many sequential methods that also give you detections more efficiently and pick up small changes versus big changes. It's a huge literature.
Okay, I'll have to speak to you afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay, Yisroel, thank you very much. Let's thank the speaker again.